Welcome everyone, and thank you so much for joining us today. My name is Eugene Stefanov. I'm a part of the marketing team at Perficient, and I'm very excited that you joined us for today's webinar in which we'll discuss keeping clinical investigators happy, productive, and loyal. Before we move on to a brief overview of Perficient, I'll mention that we are recording today. So in the next day or so, we'll be sure to email you with information on how to access this presentation. Because this is a shorter webinar, we will not be answering questions during the presentation, but you are welcome to submit questions that we can respond to via email or a phone call if you wish. You can just drop them in the chat box on the left-hand side of the screen. So I'll move on to a little bit about Perficient. So who are we? We are a consulting firm that delivers digital experience, business optimization, and industry solutions. The work we do helps cultivate and captivate customers as well as drive efficiency and productivity. We have numerous locations across the US and Europe, as well as offshore facilities in India and China. We were founded in 1997. We are a public company that's traded on the NASDAQ, and we have approximately 3,000 employees. We've also formed strategic partnerships with major technology vendors and also have dedicated solution and industry practices. So one of these industry practices is, of course, life sciences. This graphic here shows our depth of experience. You can see that we have relationships with 37 of the world's largest life sciences companies. I won't go into more detail about our experience on this call, but you are welcome to look at this slide more closely when you receive the link to the presentation. All right, now that I've covered the housekeeping items and told you a little bit about Perficient, I'd like to turn the call over to today's speaker, Param Singh.
Thanks, Eugene. So let me start out by introducing myself. My name is Param Singh. I'm a director here at Perficient in the Life Science Business Unit, and I lead the Clinical Operations Solution and Connected Health for Life Sciences initiatives within the business unit. I've been with Perficient over 9 years now and have been working with the life sciences industry my entire career. And I've personally seen the evolution of digital engagement in our industry that we're going to be discussing in today's webinar, and I'm really excited to share some of those insights with you. So let's look at today's agenda. So we're going to start out today by really just setting the stage and looking at why organizations prioritize the investigator or site relationship. And next, the core of today's webinar, we're really going to focus on a countdown of 7 relationship strains, along with examples of effective solutions, which will be presented in the order of least pressing to most pressing, as voted by each of you prior to the webinar. And after reviewing those, we'll look at where do we go from here, and then we'll finish with some links to additional resources. And as Eugene mentioned, since it's a 30-minute webinar, we really won't have time for Q&A today, but you're welcome to send us emails and after the webinar, and we can answer your questions that way. And we've got a lot of content to cover in a short amount of time, and I apologize if I go too fast, but we have quite a few things to cover today. So with that, let's get started. So we wanted to kick off today's webinar with this quote from a study that came out earlier this year because it really captures the urgency of the topic at hand, the relationship between the sponsor and CROs with their clinical investigators. So when more than half of your PIs are walking away after you've gone through the trouble of getting their site up and running, you've got a really expensive problem that needs to be solved as soon as possible. So in our team's nearly 20 years of working with the life science industry, we've spoken to countless pharmaceutical companies, medical device companies, and CROs about that relationship with their clinical sites and investigators, many of whom are actually on today's call. We've listened to their struggles and the things they've tried to make things better, including what's worked and what hasn't. So we've learned a lot from these organizations, and by helping them understand their sites as customers, we we've been able to successfully advise and support them in designing and implementing effective solutions. And today we're going to share some of those insights into that unique relationship. In today's webinar, we're going to highlight, again, the 7 most common issues that strain that relationship between the sponsor and the site and provide guidance on proven and practical solutions for each one of those. And we're going to go through them in countdown style from smallest issue to biggest issue, again, as voted by all of you prior to the webinar. So let's start with number 7, site monitoring. So while sponsors, CROs, and sites, they all acknowledge that site monitoring is a necessary part of ensuring that clinical trials are run in compliance with governing regulations and protocols, it, of course, can be rather burdensome process, both for monitors and for sites. The monitors struggle with scheduling the visits, having access to everything during those visits, completing their reports, getting those reports reviewed and approved, and ensuring that sites address any outstanding issues that they identify. While sites struggle with taking the time to prepare for and host those visits, as well as address any follow-up issues, on top of the burden of running the actual trial and handling their regular patient workload. So these struggles on both sides can be reduced by adopting a risk-based monitoring approach so that sites are only monitored when necessary, by automating preparation and follow-up notifications, by providing monitors with convenient tools that facilitate the monitoring process, by streamlining report creation, review, and approval, and automatically sharing relevant parts of the approved report with the site personnel. So one of the more thoughtful solutions that we've seen to address this issue works like this. So based on a predefined clinical data and milestones, a site monitor receives notification that one of her sites requires a site monitoring visit. She works to schedule the visit. Both she and the site receive an automated confirmation email when that visit is scheduled. At the day of the visit, the monitor arrives at the site with her iPad, which contains a proprietary site monitoring mobile app. She finds that the site's wireless internet is down for the day, so she uses the app in an offline mode. Throughout the visit, she uses the interactive decision tree-based user interface to address all of the topics, ask all of the questions, and record all of the answers. And she can even use the iPad camera to take photos and attach them to the report. After the visit, when she gets back online, the app then syncs with the system and she's able to issue the report for review. After reviewing her manager's feedback and making adjustments, she can route the report for approval, and the app allows her and her manager to apply 21 CFR Part 11 compliant digital signatures to the report and also maintain a complete audit trail of that report's review and approval history. And once approved, the details from the report that are relevant for the site are automatically shared with the site in a read-only capacity. And then follow-up emails that include action items and due dates are automatically sent to all parties. So combining risk-based monitoring with convenient and effective digital tools can significantly improve the site monitoring experience, both for monitors and for the site personnel. The ideal approach minimizes the burden on all parties without compromising any of the quality of the monitoring process, which this particular solution, I think, accomplishes beautifully. And the collaborative and transparent nature of the process inherently boosts that monitor and site relationship. Number 6 is related to subject screening. So even when sites are able to recruit a large pool of potential subjects, sponsors and CROs see far too many subjects who fail to pass the screening visit, resulting in screen failures, and subjects who pass the screening visit only to leave the study early, resulting in early terminations. Because sites get paid for every subject visit that occurs, regardless of whether the subject passes or completes the study, both of these situations are costly and lead to tensions between the sponsor and the site. So this strain can be eased by providing site personnel with tools that boost their screening effectiveness and continually monitoring and improving those tools over time, by shifting the burden of the screening process away from the site personnel, and then automating the data capture process during that screening visit. So we've seen companies tackle this issue effectively in two primary ways, both of which will leverage digital technology and the customer experience, or CX principles. So imagine the following scenario. A potential clinical subject comes into the site for a screening visit. The nurse performing that screening visit takes out her iPad, brings up the screening app, and follows the interactive prompts to move the potential subject through the various questions and the tests. When the nurse selects or inputs the potential subject's answers, the app will dynamically adjust the questions that are asked and their sequence in a decision tree format that is only relevant to that potential subject. When the nurse performs the tests, the data is automatically captured in an app via wireless connection with the testing device, and then no data entry is required. When the screening visit is complete, the nurse submits all the results, and all of which are automatically transmitted to your EDC system and other clinical systems. Additionally, stats about the nurse's performance and her experience using the app are automatically transmitted. So you can see how long it took for her to move from step to step, how long was the overall screening visit, and in which steps did she seem to struggle. As a sponsor or CRO running the study, you see the individual nurse's performance and use data, as well as the aggregate data from a single site, multiple sites, and all the sites in the study. So this analytic dashboard across the entire study allows you to identify positive and negative trends in that whole screening process, as well as potential issues that need to be clarified or corrected. Based on the data you see, you recognize that a particular question in the screening process needs clarification. So you can kick off a workflow to approve the change. Once it's approved, you make the change and you release it to production, for production use. So over time, you can see that the use data for that question will improve. This is a very popular approach to addressing the screening issue because it's easily attainable and it's clearly very impactful. So at its core, the solution really reframes the site personnel who perform the screening process as customers, and then uses customer experience principles to provide them with a convenient and engaging tool for completing that entire process. It also comes with two rather pleasant side effects. It will greatly reduce data entry that can lead to erroneous screen failures and screen passes, and it will provide insight on how you can continually improve that overall process as well. The second approach that we see industry pioneers adopting works something like this. The potential subject will still come in for a screening visit. When he checks in, he's issued the iPad for use during that visit. On the iPad, he finds an interactive app that leads him step by step through that screening process. It moves him through the questions dynamically using a decision tree format that adjusts based on his answers. When it comes to the screening tests themselves, the app moves the subject through a circuit of digital devices, each designed to perform different tests. It can be a digital scale, a digital blood pressure machine, a digital oximeter, and even a digital toilet, all of which are designed to take readings directly from the patient. When a potential subject has completed all of the questions and the tests, he submits his results and returns the iPad to the front desk. All of his data is automatically transmitted to the site personnel and to your EDC system. The data is then automatically analyzed and issued a tentative status of pass, which triggers a notification to the site investigator. Later that day, when the investigator has a moment, he can review that potential subject's results and approve his participation in the study. As soon as the status is changed to approved, the subject will receive a welcome notification and a request to complete the informed consent process. So while this scenario might seem overly futuristic to some, we're definitely seeing this happen. And all signs point to this being the direction that the industry is heading. This highly digitized and automated solution significantly reduces the screening burden on the site personnel, and it significantly increases the accuracy of the data collected during that screening process. It also more closely aligns with the subject's expectations in this age of the customer, resulting in a more pleasant and engaging experience to them. Granted, this solution does, it will take more effort to design and implement, but in the case of large-scale, long-term clinical trials or of a particular site involved in several of your trials over time, the return on investment is very clear. Number 5 is clinical data entry mistakes. Dirty clinical data is one of the most costly aspects of clinical trials. Not only does the review and cleanup slow down the time to market and increase development costs, dirty data can stall and even kill a new drug application. Consistently receiving dirty data from sites can seriously damage a sponsor or CRO's relationship with that site or investigator, and it can lead to a site no longer working with that sponsor or CRO, even though the site may have the ideal patient population, the geographic location, the equipment, and the expertise that that sponsor or CRO needs. So this tension can be reduced by leveraging digital technology and the Internet of Things in that data collection. So we're seeing companies exploring IoT, dabbling in it, and even diving in headfirst, including this first scenario. After successfully enrolling in a clinical study, a subject is issued a wrist tracker and a digital skin patch and is given login credentials for a proprietary app to download on his mobile phone and tablet. Over the course of the study, his wrist tracker and the skin patch will continuously collect and transmit data to his managing site and to your EDC system. Additionally, the mobile app will push reminders to him to take his medication on time. One day, the investigator will receive a notification that, for example, the subject's blood pressure is running high, along with a prompt to ask whether he should be asked to come in for a visit. The investigator clicks accept, and the subject receives a notification on his phone, along with the option to schedule his appointment online. He completes the scheduling process and makes his way to the site for his appointment. One of the most beneficial and attainable solutions we've seen that make use of IoT technology is for subject diaries, including reminding subjects to complete their entries, facilitating their entries in an interactive and engaging way, and automatically mining their entries for potential adverse events. So consider this second scenario. Once successfully enrolled in your study, a clinical subject is issued login credentials for a proprietary mobile app he downloads on his phone. Over the course of the participation in that study, he receives push notifications to remind him to log periodic diary entries. In the app, he follows interactive prompts to ensure that he's submitting his diary entries completely and on time. The app even rewards him for doing so. His diary entries are then automatically transmitted to your EDC system or other clinical systems, and additionally, the app makes use of other functions of his phone to submit environmental data such as exercise and sleep data. All the while, third-party contextual analysis software is monitoring his diary entries. So again, one day the investigator may receive a notification that the content of one of the subject's diary entries seems like a potential adverse event, along with the prompt to ask whether he should be asked to come in for a visit. So again, the investigator clicks accept, and the subject receives a notification on his phone, along with the option to schedule that appointment online. He completes that process, and then makes his way into the site for his appointment. The third-party contextual analysis software is an especially brilliant addition to the use of digital technology in clinical data collection. It goes above and beyond just ensuring accurate and timely data collection, as it aids the sites, the sponsors, and the CROs in the identification of potential adverse events in a way that only machine learning technologies can do. Number 4 on the list is slow subject recruitment. So even the most promising clinical sites can have trouble recruiting enough eligible subjects. Pressure from upper management or the sponsor themselves to meet recruitment targets cause stress and anxiety for study managers, which in turn strains that relationship with their underperforming sites. So this tension can be alleviated by broadening the pool of potential subjects and by building a database of potential subjects and even leveraging the social networks of potential subjects for recruiting purposes. To illustrate how a company can achieve this, let's consider the following scenario. So while surfing the web on his mobile phone, A young man receives an offer to apply to participate in a clinical trial. Thinks, why not? Let me create a user ID and password, and then follows the process and builds out a profile on that site. While there's no current trials that are a good fit for him specifically, he continues to receive occasional helpful tips for managing the conditions that he included in his profile. Down the road, potentially after failing a screening visit for a study, his profile is flagged as someone who himself is not a good fit for the study, but as someone who may have people in his social network that may be. So he receives a request to spread the word to his network, along with ready-to-use tweets and Facebook posts. And a few people in his network are interested, and they create their own profiles, and just like their friend, that process restarts for each of them. This modern, multifaceted solution not only frees sites from the constraints of their existing patient population and their physical location, but it makes it convenient for potential subjects to become and stay engaged over time with the organization. It casts a wider net than any one site can, so including more parties, even automated parties, in a recruiting effort for your studies, and leveraging the customer experience principles to connect potential subjects to sites. And now we've hit the top three. So number 3 on the list is payments. I know everyone was expecting this one. So this is one of the biggest complaints we hear from both sponsors and sites. Sponsors and CROs dedicate countless resources to researching and addressing payment questions and concerns raised by site personnel, and site personnel often feel frustrated, undervalued, and distrustful of sponsors and CROs that don't pay them as promised. So when a site is not paid on time or not paid correctly or is not acknowledged in a timely manner when payment issues do come up, it can trigger a sharp decline in site productivity, which negatively impacts a product's overall time to market. This negative outcome can be sidestepped by providing the sites with a comprehensive history of payments that have been issued to them, equipping sites with self-service tools to open claims against payments that seem incorrect, giving sites the ability to see the status of open claims over time, and then automatically launching claim investigations and resolutions whenever possible. So here's one of the more thoughtful solutions we've seen that incorporates the mentioned principles. So an investigator running a study logs in and sees an overview of her payment history. Something seems off, so she begins to review each payment in detail and comes across what she believes to be the source of the problem. The withholding of her first payment seems to be higher than what was agreed upon in the contract that she signed. The percentage was corrected for all subsequent payments, but that first payment was never adjusted. So rather than picking up the phone, right there in the system, she can actually open a claim against that payment in question and selects withholding as a type of claim. She fills out all the other required fields, submits the claim, and the status is changed to submitted. The field values that the investigator selected trigger an automatic resolution process in which the withholding percentage of the payment is compared to the details of the contract. If the automated workflow is unable to resolve the claim because the contract contains 2 different withholding percentages, for example, your clinical finance team is then notified that human intervention is required. The clinical finance team staff member picks up the claim, which changes the status to under review, and then the investigator can see that someone is working on their claim. Then your clinical finance resource works with your legal team, drafts the amendment of the contract that clarifies the correct withholding percentage for the investigator, routes that amendment for review and approval. Once receiving that approval from the investigator, they can issue a payment adjustment for that initial payment. The claim status changes to resolved, and then once the investigator receives that payment adjustment, she can click the accept resolution button for the claim, and then the claim is closed. So all of that can happen within that whole framework. So while it does take time and effort to map out all the complete automated workflows for this investigator payment claim, you can really see the incredible value in doing so. The issue of payment problems, as I'm sure all of you are aware, is so prevalent in our industry and so detrimental to site and investigator productivity and relationships that we can see, companies are making this particular solution one of their top priorities. Number 2 is outdated contact details. So at first glance, having outdated contact details for a site might seem like a pretty minor issue, but when it results in delays related to required documents and monitoring visits or clinical supplies, the issue becomes more serious. It is easy to keep a sponsor or CRO in the loop when shipping or mailing addresses change, or when a site coordinator goes on leave and an interim coordinator should now receive all the calls and emails, but it's usually not the top of mind for the sites, which can lead to a lot of frustration and rework for the sponsor. So this strain on that site relationship can be avoided by empowering the sites to see the contact information on file for them at all times, providing the sites with self-service tools to update their contact information, and periodically prompting site personnel to verify their contact details on file. So implementing this kind of solution is simple and very effective. So consider this. Every 6 months, the site coordinator receives a push notification on her mobile phone to verify that the contact information on file for the site is correct. During her review, she notices that the address that you have designated for shipping is out of date. Their medical campus now has a centralized shipping and receiving location that's different from the office where they see the patients. She makes the update, submits the change. The system automatically verifies the address with the United States Postal Service as being a valid address, and it goes on to check your CTMS if that address exists. But it hasn't been associated with the site. So because the system is unable to find an exact match of the address, you're alerted that a human needs to weigh in and make a decision. So you review the content of the update that was requested, verify the address is a valid address. You can accept the change, which creates a new address and associates the shipping address for the site in all of the integrated systems, and then the updates the change request status and then notifies the site coordinator. So this simple yet powerful solution strengths are transparency, self-service, and automation. Just think about something like this, how it can help your organization avoid communication and mailing and shipping issues with your sites. And now we move on to our number 1 concern, which is poor document compliance. Keeping sites in compliance with their required documents is an ongoing battle for every sponsor and CRO. Considering the volume of documentation that's involved in clinical trials, it's no wonder why sites struggle to stay on top of it, and why sponsors and CROs get frustrated when auditors issue findings against them because the sites are out of compliance. So this frustration can be lessened by providing sites with greater visibility into their document compliance, automating notifications related to upcoming and past due document deadlines, and enabling easier document reviews, approvals, and sharing of documents back and forth. And again, here's a very effective solution that we've seen for this issue. The site coordinator receives a notification that her CV on file will expire in the next 30 days. She doesn't have time at that moment to address the issue and then forgets. 2 weeks later, she receives another notification that her CV is out of date. And since the issue is more time sensitive, you as the sponsor also receive a notification. Following the second notification, she makes time to update her CV and uses the link in the notification to log in. She finds her current CV on file, uploads the new version, and submits it. You receive a notification about her activities, and she's also able to follow the status of her newly uploaded CV over time, so she knows that you're taking action on her submission. The next time she logs in, she sees that all of her site documents are in good standing, including her new CV. So this approach empowers sites to manage their own document compliance status, makes it easy and convenient to do so, and reassures them that the sponsor or CRO are supporting their efforts. You'd be amazed at how much something so simple can improve that relationship with the site coordinators. And that brings us to the end of our countdown. So I want to briefly mention a couple of ideas of where to go from here. So if you feel confident that some or all of the issues that we discussed today apply to your organization and you're interested in actually seeing the solutions that we've described in action, you can send us an email. We have built a number of site-facing applications to solve these types of problems, and we would be very happy to share them with you. On the other hand, if you're not really sure about the root of your struggles that you're having with your clinical sites, the first step is to conduct the research to find the answers. And we're actually in an engagement right now that centers on this very topic, helping a sponsor organization better understand the customer journey experienced by their preferred investigators, and then build out a strategy and roadmap for improving that experience. So we really encourage it to be a data-driven, data-driven research in selecting the tools and selecting the technology that you put in place to address the issues that you're actually having. So with that, I know we're over time, but I'll turn it back to Eugene to touch on the additional resources that we have available, and also our contact information, so you can contact us for further discussion on this topic. Eugene?
Great, thank you, Param. So I just want to throw out a couple of additional resources out there. We have guides, white papers, webinars on demand, as well as upcoming webinars that are on Perficient's website. All of these are on Perficient's website. You can also access the ones that are currently on your screen. You can access them via the presentation that will be sent to you. If you do have questions right after the webinar, you are welcome to email Param directly. His email address is right here. We will also be following up with you via email, which might be a good time for you to ask your questions there as well. We want to thank you so much for taking the time to sit on today's webinar. We greatly appreciate it and look forward to having you join future ones as well. Thanks so much, and look forward to seeing you next time. Take care.